Hello, welcome to Building Native Apps for Any Device with .NET. I am one of your hosts of the duo here. I'm David Ortnow, Principal Program Manager for Mobile SDKs, and I'm joined by
Maddie Legere. I'm the Program Manager for Xamarin Tooling, along with an amazing team of folks. And I'm very excited to be here remotely with David today.
Remotely with David. We're doing the best we can, and we're having lots of fun doing it. So let's dive right in. We've got a lot of ground to cover today. So what are we going to be talking about? First off, we'll talk about .NET and Xamarin, what's happening overall. We'll talk then about developer experience improvements. What are we doing to help you, be more productive, be faster, deliver better products? What's happening within the mobile SDKs themselves for Android and iOS? And then, of course, Xamarin Forms, near and dear to my heart. What have we been doing in Xamarin Forms 4? What's upcoming for Xamarin Forms 5? And then we're going to talk about something very special, .NET MAUI. Don't want to give away too much, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's start off by talking about .NET. Maddie, can you take us through this?
Absolutely. Well, .NET is your platform for building anything. It is free, it's cross-platform, it's open source, it's a developer platform. And the whole point of .NET is that you can use multiple different languages, editors, libraries, and build for all these different things you see here. So desktop, web, mobile, cloud, even IoT and gaming like on Xbox. And it's general purpose. So once you learn how to build one type of application, you can build other types of applications for different workloads, such as mobile, which is where Xamarin comes in. And the .NET ecosystem is crazy growing. It's got amazing momentum right now. And these are just some of the data points that we love sharing. And not only is it just continuing to grow as an ecosystem, but it's also continuing to grow in adoption. And we see that with things like .NET Core, new monthly active developers, over 600,000 new monthly active developers this last year, but also with things like our tooling, Visual Studio, and our different operating systems like Linux, which you can see on the next slide, which is super cool for .NET. Like I said, .NET Mobile and Xamarin are kind of synonymous. Xamarin is the way to build mobile apps with .NET. David, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Xamarin actually is?
Absolutely. So we love to describe it this way. It's an open source app platform from Microsoft for building modern, performant iOS, Android, macOS, watchOS, tvOS, all the OSs with .NET. We've been doing it for a long time. Back previously was Mono Touch and Mono Android, like a decade ago. And for the past 6 years, it's been Xamarin Forms, Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android. Of course, Xamarin Android and Xamarin iOS were prior to that as well. So lots of companies are making huge bets and investments on Xamarin, and love that Microsoft now is backing and supporting and driving this forward. We've got lots of wonderful things up on our showcase. You can go to xamarin.com/showcase and find out more information about several of these apps, as well as many, many more. .NET mobile apps with Xamarin really is, at its heart, at its core, it's iOS and Android apps with C#. Anything you could be doing with Java, with Objective-C, you can do with C#. And you don't have to cross those language boundaries, which is just awesome. Of course, if you want to, you can. We don't really prevent you from doing anything. If you want to bring Objective-C and Swift to the table, mix it in with your .NET, you can do that. We have binding library projects. And you can do this all with Visual Studio, and the end result is a native app. So anything Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, all native applications. It's really core to the character of Xamarin. And then, of course, cross-platform. What we heard from developers and from customers is this is great that we can use C# and we can share more C#, but how can we share even more in terms of UI, in terms of accessing native things like geofencing or Bluetooth or connectivity, camera, photos, on and on. And so that's where Xamarin Essentials comes in. And you can share even more code with .NET Standard. And of course, it's all up on GitHub, free, it's open source, it's part of .NET and the open source community. And we have such a vibrant community. Contributors are up. The ecosystem is just growing and growing. We have the highest satisfaction numbers, highest engagement numbers we've ever seen. We're really excited about that. Now, as I mentioned, you can share all that C# code and you can build the UI for iOS, Android, and any other .NET platform in the native frameworks for those platforms. But what if you want to share more? As I mentioned, Xamarin Essentials gets you all the native cross-platform APIs, and Xamarin Forms allows you to share all the UI that you want. But again, not stopping you from doing anything, you can choose to blend the shared UI with the platform-specific UI, however your app best can take advantage of those things. And so once you bring those pieces to the table, you are sharing upwards of 98, 99% of the code of your applications. Of course, depending on plugins and what your app actually does, in addition to all your business logic. So it's great. Now, if you don't find what you need in the box, your Xamarin component vendors are there to help you out. And they do a great job of building very powerful and scenario-based controls for things like calendars and data grids, and for theme control. UX Divers and Elite Kit and others and Aurora are building some amazing design templates to get you beautiful apps off the ground very quickly. Aurora has Skia-based controls that give you that really strong fidelity between platforms. So tons of great components from all of these vendors here. But that's just the beginning, and that's where you start. But what is your developer experience, and what have we been doing to improve the tooling? So Maddie, take us through some of these things.
Yes, of course. Well, first I want to start off with a laundry list of just some of the things that we've done over the past year to improve your experience as a Xamarin developer. There's so many things across all the different workloads, iOS, Android, Forms, and just the fundamental things. And what I want to do right now is, instead of going through all of these things, because we have a lot of things to show you, just take you through some of my favorites. First and foremost, Xamarin's actually over 2 times faster to install than ever now, which is super cool, and it's way smaller. So in Visual Studio 2017, it was 23 gigs. Now it's down to 6. And that's not only great for you if you're setting up a new dev box, but if you're onboarding people to your team, to your app, they can get started easier than ever. And calling back to those amazing .NET Momentum ecosystem stats we had earlier, we see more people checking off and installing and trying out Xamarin because it's much smaller and much easier to install. When I look at productivity, I like to think of 4 different facets that we try to always be improving. And the first one is just coding. And here you see some of our favorite things that we've done over the past years, including IntelliCode for both XAML, C#, and Android XML, which is super cool. And you can also do multi-targeting in your XAML code, things like on platform and on device, and multi-targeting with your debugging, which is really cool. And code deeper with source link, so you can actually see the source of the packages you're pulling in. Now, with all this amazing code you're writing, you obviously are going to want to build and deploy your projects faster than ever. That's where you get things like your optimized compilers that we've been leaning on, whether that's from the native SDKs, from Mono, innovations in the Xamarin space or in the native space. And we've been really bringing down your build and deploy times over many of the last releases, and we're going to continue to do so. Next, of course, your app might be on your user's device. It might be on your device for you to test out. You want it to start up as fast as possible. So we gave you something called startup tracing, which actually leverages the just-in-time compilation on Android, as well as the ahead-of-time compilation you'd get with iOS, and gives you Android apps that can start up even faster and save up to 60% of that startup time. And we also give you things like app bundles, which will reduce the size of your app for your end user, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Of course, something you might have heard of, XAML Hot Reload, which is our tool for iterating faster than ever on your UI changes, and Hot Restart, which is the way to make changes outside of your XAML and really quickly get your app back up and running. And currently that's for iOS, and we'll take a look at that actually right now.
Woohoo!
So let me share my screen. I already am. I'm amazing. David's got it all set up. He's like the wizard of Streamlabs, and he does all the streaming. So you can see we're in these cool little Xamarin
When it works.
now.
When it works. Woo.
When it works. I am here in Visual Studio 2019. So Visual Studio 16.6 is out as of this video being released. So you'll be able to use all this stuff right now that I'm showing you. And I actually pulled down an app from one of our amazing Xamarin Forms team members, Javier. You can catch it on GitHub. And it's an app that just kind of shows you some food, some restaurants, you know, it's a delivery app. Everyone's thinking about delivery right now. And this is my iPhone right here. I'm using this cool little app called Reflector to screen mirror it, but I actually have the physical device right here on my desk, which is nice. And I'm debugging it. And how can I debug to an iPhone? You might ask. Well, that's actually Hot Restart, which is what's doing that. So I plug it in over USB, hit deploy, log in with my Apple account, and Visual Studio handles all of the provisioning and everything for me. So I can actually get started debugging with just my device. I'm always going to need a Mac to do my release builds and all that stuff. But it's really, really nifty to get started right off the bat if you just have an iPhone and Visual Studio. 6 gig Xamarin install. Get started. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this background color here to blue. And a couple things are going to happen. I'm going to hit save. It's going to give it a sec. And then it's going to update. But you see that those restaurant cards up top went away. And so one of the amazing things that XAML Hot Reload does is it refreshes the whole page. So when you make a change, you hit save, it's going to refresh that page really quick, and you'll be able to see all the changes you made on save quickly shown. But in some complicated apps we've seen with some of our customers, you might be doing things where you're not actually loading the data in the standard way. So, maybe you're not doing it in the constructor on appearing, but you're setting it up from a main view up here, and this is just a bunch of views stitched together. And that's what Javier is doing in this app. So he reached out and he was like, hey, when I hit save, I actually lose some of my data here because of the way I'm creating my view model. Well, this is something we've been working on the tooling side for actually a really long time now, which is super cool. Hot Reload's been out for a little bit under a year, and this is something we've heard since the beginning. So I'm going to stop debugging, go to Tools Options, Xamarin, Hot Reload, best menu ever. I'm going to switch to Changes Only right here. So this is a new feature. It's in preview in Stable Visual Studio right now. So you can go in and enable this right now. Hit OK. Start debugging again. Using that Hot Restart, you can see it's doing its thinking. Going right to my iPhone. I have some other cool apps on here that you might get to see a sneak peek of later, like an island tracker app. What's that about? Launches back up. Still have that blue background. And my live visual tree popped up right here. But the first thing I'm going to do is go back into that restaurant's view and type my new background color. We're going to set it back to white. You can see I didn't actually hit save here, which is one of the amazing features of this, because it just refreshed what I changed right there. And it didn't change anything about the page otherwise. And this is leveraging what the Windows Hot Reloads have been doing from the beginning. So if you're familiar with UWP, WPF, and their Hot Reload, what they do is they only reload what changed, not on save, but just when you change it. And that is how we also got this amazing thing right here, the live visual tree. And what that lets me do is go in and see all of the things that are building up this page right here as I navigate. So you can see that this is actually it's a dual screen app. David will talk to you a bit more about dual screen, but I have a 2-pane view, and that's where this restaurant's view that I'm in comes in. And I can go in and I can go say, hey, I want to go look at actually where I make this collection view in my XAML. Click on that, and it'll bring me right to that part of my XAML right away, which is amazing.
That's great.
Yeah. And these numbers show you all the different things in it. So this single app has 275 little things running on it in this page right now, which is incredible. So definitely try it out. Tools, Options, Xamarin, Changes Only. The Changes Only Hot Reload works for your Android, your iOS, Mac, Windows, all the great things. Hot Restart right now is just for iOS, although we're going to pop back to the slides and we'll talk a little bit about what's coming. So Hot Reload, like I said, it's been out since last July. We've gotten amazing feedback on it from the beginning. Keep the tweets coming. We love them. They make my day. We always post them to the team and everyone gets really excited. And this is also how we've discovered these things, these new issues or these things that people want. Like, hey, I want that live visual tree. Or, hey, I want, the ability to just refresh what changed. And that's what we're making all these changes from is your feedback. So definitely keep it rolling in. Like I said, Hot Restart is kind of an evolution of Hot Reload. The idea is that you can change something that's not XAML and really quickly get it back up and running, in many cases under 10 seconds. And you can see the incremental build and deploy goes from just under a minute to just under 10 seconds. And that is how I get that iOS app running on my iPhone plugged into my PC. Pretty cool. But like I said, Hot Reload's all over the place. iOS, Android, Windows, Mac. Hot Restart, just iOS right now, but we are bringing it to Android for both Mac and Windows, as well as iOS on Mac, and making it an even more integrated part of your F5 experience.
Sweet. I love that. That's great.
It's so sweet. It's so much fun. If you tuned into Build a couple, whenever that was, I was using this with Scott Hanselman from my kitchen island, which is nice. All I had to do is bring my phone and my laptop over.
Nice.
Pretty cool.
Well, what's happening with the SDKs? Android and iOS have anything new?
Well, one thing that's amazing about Xamarin is that we always stay up to date with what's going on with our SDKs. We are same day support. Your users will never be missing out with the latest and greatest operating system improvements. We have Android 11 support out now, Xcode support, so support as the tooling and improves, that's out as well. And because of that, we also get to leverage the developer and performance improvements that they give you on the SDK side within Xamarin. So things like hot reload, hot restart are things that we're doing to make your development experience better. We also pull in the things that the native platforms do to make your development experience better. So you get the best of all the worlds. One such example, which I know I mentioned briefly earlier, is Android app bundles. And the Android app bundles is the idea that when you make an APK, it's going to have a lot of stuff in it. It's going to have all the different languages and screen densities for your resources, all the different image sizes and ABIs. And then your user is going to go download it from the Play Store and get all that stuff, when in reality, they only need a subset of it. So what App Bundles lets you do is upload one giant bundle, and then when your user goes and downloads it, they're only going to get what they need. So they'll get up to a 50% size reduction in some cases of what that APK is. And you can see in this case, it's just pulling down the languages and densities that this user needs. We also have given you support for Android Jetpack and Android X. And those are the next generation of support libraries for Android that will make your app even more modern and great for your users. And we have an experimental tool to help you quickly migrate all your app compat libraries out in Visual Studio right now. It's in Tools Options, Xamarin Android, around there. But definitely try it out. And like we said, you can always stay up to date with the latest and greatest operating system and native SDK improvements. Now, that's enough about native. Let's talk about some beautiful cross-platform stuff that's happening in Xamarin Forms. David, I know you have a lot you want to show.
I do have a lot. So what's great about Xamarin Forms is it's not just native, but it's cross. And so you get to optimize your productivity in building your UIs. So let's cover real quickly what's been happening in Xamarin Forms 4. And I decided that rather than building my own demo, you've been posting, the developers that use the product, have been posting so many awesome examples lately that I should just present what you've been doing. And so that's what I've done. Javier from the team maintains a website up on GitHub. He maintains a GitHub where he lists out all the great samples that he comes across and that you share with us. And so you can go to AKAMS XF Good UI and check that out. And he's been adding so many samples, I thought, why not use these to showcase all the wonderful things that the team and our contributors have been putting into Xamarin Forms in the 4.0 series. And so here's Collection View. Collection View, of course, is like the successor to List View, where List View is a very vertical-only kind of implementation of the native controls. Collection View goes to the extent of giving you grids, giving you vertical lists and horizontal lists. Of course, you still get grouping, but it's also optimized for cross-platform development, where a lot of conveniences were done to make List View do what it did. It also wasn't necessarily the most performant. So Collection View is able to go a step further with a lot of these things and bring you more modern native controls. So on each of these slides, you'll see there's a GitHub link down there at the bottom, in addition to the code sample in the image. Go check these out, dig more into them, and we've also got documentation on all of these. Shell is another one that we've heard from developers has been a real productivity enhancement, where you can much more quickly, with much less code, stand up tab bars, flyout menus, which is your hamburger, also adding tabs to the top, which you can see in this news reproduction here. So of course, Xamarin, or excuse me, I almost said Xamarin News. Microsoft News is a Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android app. And so what Elisha did is took it and said, hey, could I rebuild this? And how quickly could I rebuild this if I use Xamarin Forms? And so you can go check that out. Visual is an API that we were hearing from a lot of companies and customers that they needed to be able to more quickly from the start have a Android and iOS app that looked similar or exactly the same. And so, one of the great benefits of Xamarin Forms is it's native, but that also means that Android looks like Android, iOS looks like iOS, and some of those base themes are not necessarily very close to what you're trying to achieve. So Google has an iOS library for material design, and of course, Android implements material design by default. And so we said, well, what can we do to bring that more easily directly into Xamarin Forms? So as you can see here in the style setter, there's a visual property that is being set to material. You can do this at the control level as it's being done here. You can do this at the app level, at the page level, and you can also override it and start mixing and matching. I think there's like 7 controls that we've bound and provided. Button is one, entries are another. Of course, entry is a very distinctive material design implementation with the placeholder. And you can be using them from the get-go in your Xamarin Forms application, and they give you a very similar experience across Android and iOS. Visual also can be used with other things, so you could utilize your own custom renderers for your company. So let's say that you have a design system that you implement that is your brand standards. You could utilize Visual to very quickly style the existing controls in your preference. And it's just as simple as setting Visual and the material. Instead of material, you would put in your company identifier. So pretty cool stuff there. Now, Carousel View is a close cousin, perhaps, sibling to Collection View. They have a common ancestry. And so as we were putting together Collection View can do everything that you see in Carousel View. But, when you're looking for a carousel, you're not typing in Collection View, you're typing in Carousel View. And this is geared specifically toward those scenarios where a carousel makes sense. So we hear from some customers that say, hey, I haven't built an app without a carousel in over a year. And so we knew that this was a control that was very in demand. And we have that now for you in Xamarin Forms 4.6 is the current release. It's actually been in Xamarin Forms for several different releases, and you can take advantage of it. My mouth's watering again. Every time I look at this GIF, my mouth's just like, oh, hey, you're hungry. Maybe I could use that food ordering app and get some burgers delivered.
We have so many good food demos.
I know everything. You can tell what we're thinking about for sure. Less travel apps, more food apps. Swipe View is a control that you can wrap around anything and implement swipe items. And so you can see it kind of quickly here in the animation. You see this often in lists of things where you do a swipe gesture and it reveals like a delete button or an archive button. Most of our mail apps, I think, have this now. So this is a real quick and easy way to do that. This sample shows using some just basic swipe items with colors and text, but you can actually put any view into that you want. You can provide a data template and then, of course, use MVVM and bind that to some commands. This one just came from Andrei Misyukovich, I believe is the pronunciation. I apologize, Andrei, if I completely butchered that. But he's been a wonderful contributor to the community for quite a while now, and I'm really excited about this one. I'm already using this in my apps. It's exactly what it sounds like. You wrap something that you want to expand and show content for. And so you can see breads and pastries, dairy products. Those are the headers, and then as you click on it, the content expands out. There's even some additional PRs coming in already from Andre to improve this, to provide horizontal expansion, and to give you more control over how the effect takes place. Really, really cool stuff. And Javier, who we continue to feature, I feel like it's almost the Javier show here, but we're featuring a lot of his beautiful examples. C# UI, easily the most popular pull request we have had in my memory since working on the project. And so, of course, XAML is beloved. XAML is heavily used. XAML is part of our ecosystem, and it's not going anywhere. People love XAML. However, there are those of you who really, really prefer to use C# in many cases, if not exclusively. And so when doing so, in order to make your code more legible, it's common practice to use method extensions like style and fill and expand horizontally and margin and bind. So Vincent Hugendorn has a library out there called C# for Markup, and he submitted this pull request to Xamarin Forms to contribute this. You can see a production example on the right here of an application that he built using this style. You can also still separate your UI from your logic using some patterns that he shows, using partial classes and things like that. Really productive way to do code, to do UI, and I think many of you really would love to take advantage of this. It's good for small projects, it's good for large projects. But if it's not your thing, stick with the XAML. You'll be more than happy there. That's just some of the things that we've been shipping, but there are so many things happening within our community and within the ecosystem. I wanted to highlight a few of the plugins that really have caught my imagination. So this one is the Shared Transitions plugin. I think I first saw Kim Philpotts on one of his streams showing this. It's just awesome to see that real seamless transition of the photo from one page to another page. It's delightful. Another one that came up as I was looking through the good-looking UI examples actually was this Neo Controls. It's a acrylic-inspired design that gives you a base styling for your application. So if this is the kind of skeuomorphic thing, Neo skeuomorphic, I think is what we're calling it, you could totally check that out. Pancake View. Definitely the most popular, probably has the best icon. I probably should have used the product icon for that here. It's a stack of pancakes, as you can imagine. Again, my mouth is watering. But it's really a frame taken to its natural conclusions of full control for all the shadows, the corner radiuses, the borders, even has some gradient love pushed into it. It's really everything you wanted as a base element control to do really nice, good-looking design, and it's being used in this real-world app. I believe it's an open-source app for tracking COVID-19 instances and data. And then Sharpnado from Jean-Marie in France. It's awesome cross-platform implementation of the tab bar down there with a raised button, and you can put that kind of thing anywhere in the tab bar. And then acrylic design implementation is just gorgeous, both in dark and in light. And he has his own implementation of dark and light control. So definitely check that out. There's even more stuff in Sharpnado. That's just a couple of the things that I see as I look at this plugin here. Now, I wanted to spend some time talking briefly about dual screen support. The Surface Duo, I've held one in my hands. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous device. The Surface team is doing an amazing job with it. Back in February, we hosted an event on the Microsoft campus, both in Redmond and then in the UK. And you can go to this link here that's on the screen. You can check out the videos from that event, and you can see this app being demoed live on device by Kevin Gallo. And then there's also some demos later in the keynote session. Really cool to have Xamarin featured there. But let me show you this app and kind of talk you through a little bit of what's going on. So there we go. Hi, Maddie. How's it going in your Xamagon down there? You good?
Oh, it's great. I love it.
So first things first, I am enabling some preview features. We've been making use of these flags for features that are useful to you today, and we know that developers want them to be in the box rather than relying on third-party libraries. But the APIs are still either under discussion, or we're just working through some of the final polish on them. But some of these are in here for the purpose of this demo. The state triggers, an indicator view, which is a kind of a sibling control to the carousel view. And then the media element, which you'll see is the video player that we're using. Now in the project over here, you'll see that I've got, you see that I've got the dual screen. Let me zoom in on that. So that we have a NuGet package that brings you the two-pane view that I'm going to show you, and this is where you get that, as well as the cross-platform service helpers for knowing when you have a dual-screen device or not. Now, the app that Maddie showed you previously, the food delivery app, is a dual screen enabled app, but you saw it running on a single screen. And that's one of the cool things about this is you can dual enable your applications and they will still run just fine on a single screen. They will just take additional advantage of dual screens when they're running there. So here I've got the app up and running in dual screen mode. Let's go ahead and scroll through a few things here. I've got a carousel at the top. I've got a collection view down here. It's got both vertical scrolling and horizontal scrolling. I've got Sharpnado cross-platform tabs, so I can put my tabs anywhere in the app I want. And then I've got my second pane over here. So let's look at how that code is put together. I'll come back over here to my main page and let me minimize my view states. So in my main page for this application, I have two panes. I've got pane 1 and, as you would imagine, pane 2. Within them, it takes a content view right now. So in this particular case, it's an animation view. Animation view is simply a content view that we've added some logic to do a simple crossfade as we replace that content. And we are utilizing lazy loading to do a lot of this work. Now, if you're looking for a more complex example of implementing Xamarin Forms, this is a really good one to go look at because we're doing some pretty cool things in here that are somewhat non-standard. But it's really a testament to how powerful Xamarin Forms is, that even before we had custom implementations of anything for two screens, we were able to do all the work in Xamarin Forms. We didn't have to add anything to the core project. So that was really a cool testament to the architecture of what we have. So in here, I kind of collapsed this initially, but I've got my view states. So here's where those state triggers that I mentioned earlier come into play. I can create custom states for when the video is spanned, when it's not spanned, am I in two screens with video playing or not video playing, and then I can use the VSM to apply the different layouts that I need to apply. So let's do one more thing here, and then I'll jump back over to the app. This is the tab host view, and this is where the Sharpnado tabs are being used for tab underlining. And you'll see why I'm showcasing this here, because we were really inspired by this. We're very excited about the flexibility that this really allows for you, because the UI tab bar controller and other native implementations of tabs can really be a chore to work with. That's a good way of saying it. That's a nice way of saying it. So simply adding tabs in there, yeah, it's nice and generous, right? So let me see if I can do this without, sometimes the emulator can be finicky. Whoop. Yeah, I figured that was going to happen. All right, so we've got the app in single pane mode. I've got my carousel view. I've got my collection view down here. I've got horizontal and vertical scrolling. If I can get my finger on my computer screen. Oh, it's because I'm at the end of the row. Look at that. And then I can go ahead and start playing the video. And hey, Maddie, it's you. Look at that. And then I can, of course, draw on the screen because it's Skia Sharp. So I can do a smiley face with my left hand. And then I can grab the bottom, and let's go ahead and span that across two screens. Now, in my video, you can see that my layout changed, but my video continued playing. And then my content that was previously below it has now just moved to the right. So this is those state triggers in action, moving things around to optimize for my layouts. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate to show you how I get the nice rotation. And then let me go ahead and close that video. And now I'm back at the original layout. However, I've got that new content in the second pane that pairs up with the first. And then I can, of course, rotate back to my original position. Yeah, so some really cool stuff, all made possible by the dual screen SDKs. And definitely check that out. It's up on GitHub. It's Xamarin/app-Xamarin TV. And you just Google it. I'm sure you'll find it everywhere. Really cool stuff. So with that, let's go back because I've got a lot more that I want to cover for you. I could go on forever, as Maddie well knows, talking about what we've done in the past year for Xamarin Forms. So many amazing things. Embedded fonts, not to mention font image source, probably some of my favorites. But what is going to come next? I want to talk about what's coming for you in Xamarin Forms 5. Whew. I'm so excited. So as I mentioned, Shell has been very well received and has helped people become more productive more quickly. However, what we've been hearing is, yeah, but I need to do this other thing, or I need to do this advanced thing, or I want to be able to customize this more easily. And, you know, as much as we never like hearing that it doesn't quite meet the needs, that's actually what guides us. That's we are guided by those frustration points. So they're signals to us of what we can do to improve. So here we are in Shell, and you can see that I've added a new grouping called Shell Routes. So this is an idea of how we might be able to light up for you things that are not visible in the main tabs, which you see further down the XAML here, but they are things that you need to be able to get to. And maybe they're the things that you need to be able to get to at the very beginning, like an onboarding flow or a login screen or forgot. And then what if you have a secondary set of tabs that you want to be able to get to, and you want to use the same syntax you used previously? So we could potentially give you the ability to do sets of tabs like this. Now this is an idea, and it's something that we think we can do, but the actual implementation may look a little different from this. Something that we have a PR for right now is gradient brushes. So similar to what you've seen from other libraries in the past, linear gradient brush is based on the same APIs that you get today in WPF. You add your stops, and then you apply those brushes to something like, for example, the bar background of the navigation page. On the right here, you see an example of some gradients at work, and this is a sample that we'll be providing to showcase this for you. Another one that is really fundamental, and a lot of folks use Skia Sharp, both for this and for gradients, is the ability to do simple shapes, lines, ellipses, boxes, just to be able to achieve a design like you see over here, an example that we pulled from Dribbble. And so this is another sample that we'll be rebuilding, and it is using these simple shapes and paths to be able to do this. Now, paths is also really cool because you can do something like this conversation bubble that you see in the center here to achieve that background. So really cool stuff, and it all uses, in this particular case, native drawing APIs from the graphics libraries of each platform. This is something that you can continue to do with Skia Sharp, but we think that this will be a nice in-the-box solution for developers. Harkening back to my love that I keep fawning over the Sharpnado tabs, we have tab view here. So we have an implementation, a prototype of this. And it's just as straightforward as what you see on the screen here. You just say tab view, and you provide control templates for these things. So in the sample to the right, you see that first button is much larger. In my first tab view item, I call that a fab tab item template. And so that fab floating action button has a different style and a different shape and a different size to it. And that's totally fine because it's using just the primitives of what Xamarin Forms provides to you. And at the end of the day, they're all native UI controls on the native platforms. So you still get, for example, the accessibility that a button should get. And then app bar. Man, if you need to control every little aspect of the navigation bar, you know how hard that can be on the native platforms. So by providing an app bar, a cross-platform implementation of this, it just makes it so much easier for you to control everything about it. So we have a prototype of this as well. Very excited about that to just make things so much easier when you need that. But of course, you'll still continue to always get the native UI navigation bar, UI tab bar, controller, etc., all those sorts of things. That's not going away. These are additional options for you to make things easier. So when can you get these things? Of course, that's the big question. What we have today is Xamarin Forms 4.6. 4.7 is coming in June. 4.8, 4.9, and then 5.0 will start shipping all these new things that I've just shown you. They'll start to appear in 5.0. We also have some other big performance improvements that are coming there. If you want more details on any of the roadmap stuff, hit the AKAMS in the upper right-hand corner there, and we are always updating that with the latest information we have so that you can take full advantage of all of these releases. Again, we're shipping every 6 weeks, so plenty of good value coming to you all the time, and then service releases in between. But bringing it back to the context that we started with, this is all part of a unified platform where mobile is side by side with desktop, web, cloud, gaming. What does that mean for us? So it's time to talk about evolving. People have been asking for a Xamarin Evolve for a very long time, and I'm so pleased to bring this to you today. So I highly recommend checking out Scott Hunter's presentation from Build. Go to the Build website, check out his journey to one.net, where he talks about what is happening with .NET all up and where this fits into it. The vision is real simple. It's one.net. It's in the name. No more framework, core, standard, all these different things, having to kind of unravel it all. Moving forward, we should be able to talk about one.net. It's a single SDK. It's one BCL. It's one cross-platform way to do native UI, one cross-platform way to do web UI. One cloud native investment or just more cloud native investment, and then continued improvements across the board for all the things that you need to do. Making sure that you, when you choose .NET and you advocate for .NET, you're getting a best of breed for all the workloads that you need to target. So with that, I'm really excited to present the evolution of Xamarin Forms, which is .NET Multi-Platform App UI, affectionately called MAUI. So this is how you do cross-platform native UI from a single project and a single code base. You can deploy to multiple devices, both desktop and mobile. And it is, again, the evolution of Xamarin Forms. So everything that you're doing today in Xamarin Forms, all your investments in Xamarin Forms, it's just the next version. It's the evolution. It's the iteration. And we will make sure that we help you to get there. We will have migration tooling. We will have guidance and all that sort of thing for you. And we will be previewing it later this year, but it will ship with .NET 6 in 2021. So this is definitely a little bit further out there, but we're going to do it all in the open. So we want you to come up to GitHub and see the roadmap, see what this is going to look like and how this transition is going to take place. A couple of things to kind of whet your appetite and give you some expectations about what it's going to look like. Xamarin Forms will be moving into the system.maui namespace, and Xamarin Essentials into system.devices. Now, there's plenty of work to make all of that happen, and so, maybe this is etched in Jello at this point, but that is the plan, and that's what we're working towards, and that's what I'm going to show you today. Your file new experience is multi-platform app UI. If you search for any of the terms that you know and love today, you'll get this. It's the one thing to do, and you can do anything you need to do with it. It's a really powerful yet flexible way to build your apps. From the command line, you'll now be able to do .NET New MAUI, and I'm going to show that for you here in just a moment. It's really cool. What does this mean for iOS and Android? So Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android, pretty much unchanged, other than it's now fully part of .NET. So it's .NET for iOS and .NET for Android. The namespaces and APIs, because they are projections of what Apple and Google do today, are unchanged. No need to do anything to your projects in terms of namespace changes as we move forward into this new ecosystem. File new SDK style, everybody gets that. And then, of course, you get the new CLI for iOS and Android as well. So everything that you know and love is still there. You'll still have the file new experiences, but you'll also have the addition of the same thing you benefit from if you're doing web or you're doing console apps from the CLI, which is pretty awesome. So a bit of reassuring for those of you who are longtime XAML and Xamarin Forms lovers. It's all there. It's all first class. We are not removing and taking back any aspect of that. You can continue to build the applications as you do today. We're going to give you more. We're going to bring you forward. Think of it as Xamarin Forms 6, Xamarin Forms 7. It's just MAUI, and we're embracing more platforms and more ways of doing things. So while you can continue doing it that way, I want to show you a new way of building applications. So let me switch over to my desktop. All right, so we're on my desk, and I've got my terminal open here, and I've got my simulator, and that's it. I'm in my Build 2020 folder, nothing in there as you can see, and I'm going to do .NET New MAUI. Pretty exciting, pretty exciting. I'm going to give it a name, and the demo is a counter app, so I'm going to do fancy counter because I don't want to be just normal average counter. I want to be fancy. All right, cool. So now I've got my fancy counter, so let's go ahead and go in there. And first thing I need to do is I need to restore some NuGets. So, oops, iOS, get in here, and I'm going to use an MS build command because this works best for me. In the future, it will be a .NET restore, just like you normally would, and that basically works, but this is a bit more thorough. All right, cool. So there we are. I'm going to come back up here, and my favorite part of this is I open it in VS Code. Yay!
Woo!
All right, so you can see over here from a project structure standpoint, this particular demo has 3 projects. We're going to show you that single project experience here in just a moment. But within here, I just am going to work with my main page. So my main page, you can see the system.maui up here at the top, and I've got labels, and I've got buttons and all kinds of other stuff. This is a C# Fluent syntax that implements model view update, all on top of your existing Xamarin Forms, now Maui, right? So you can see that I've got a state object up here with a count, and let's go ahead and let's just run it. So I'm going to use Command Enter to kick off a run. I pick my iPhone 11. I pick the version of the iPhone 11 that I'm using. This is going to do the normal build and deploy. Nothing has changed there other than the fact that it will be using the new .NET Build shared build system that everything will share. Shared that everything will share. I just keep saying the word share and common.
Share everything. Perfect.
So what's great about this is that hot reload baked into this experience.
Oh.
All right, here we go. Here comes my counter app. Loads up. Not too shabby. I've got a fab down here. But you know what? My value is to the left. So I've got a Fluent text alignment here. And I can say, okay, let's go ahead and center that. Give it a second to populate and send over that update. Beautiful. And best part of all, just like those incremental reloads, my count didn't change. So I can keep going. But like I said, fancy counter. So let's not stop here. Let's do something cool. All right, so stop that. I've got a couple of code snippets I'm going to bring in here. So I'm first going to bring in a linear gradient because, of course, the future has gradients. Whoops, wrong keystroke.
We do love gradients with Xamarin.
It's the world that loves gradients. I've been kind of brought kicking and screaming into the gradients thing, if I'm being honest.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, a gradient well done is very pleasing. It's just that it's really easy to do gradients that kind of just make you think of GeoCities. You know what I'm saying?
I love all these namespaces you're bringing in, too.
Yeah, super easy. And so then I'm going to swap out this body, which is the body tag is the method that tells it to reload. So some of these implementation details may change, but for the purposes of this demo, based on the experiments we've been doing, this is what we have. So I've got a new body. I have a new body. It's called a coronavirus body, or no,
COVID-19.
What do we call this? We're contained. Quarantine. It's my quarantine body. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I like to say I'm quarantined.
Quarantined. There you go. Okay, so now I've gotten rid of my problems. You can see that I've got a lot more going on here. And of course, in a real application, you'd refactor these things out to styles and whatnot. But hey, so let me kick that back off. You can see that I've got a custom font family in here. I've got my linear gradient being applied up here. I'm inside of a Z stack and a V stack. These things are just stack layouts. And here it comes. Wait for it. Oh, isn't that sweet?
I love that.
I can increment this puppy, and yeah, it's based on a sample design that I found. I don't want to claim complete credit here. So I'll code 12 lines this month. That's probably being generous. I don't get to code too much these days, but I do get to run a lot because I've actually run. I've actually joined a race to do 1,000 kilometers across Tennessee. It's a virtual race, but I have like 5 months to do it, so it's no big deal. But you can see my state is still here. I can go ahead and very quickly start adding some things like a new button to kind of limit myself here. So let's decrement and then add my click handler and bring my count back down. Count value, just like that. And now I've got a decrement button down here. and I can bring it back down to something more reasonable. So that's kind of a look at some of the model view update things that we have been experimenting with and talking to you about, and how we see the future shaping up with Maui. But that is not all. We think we can make it even easier and more flexible. Again, never taking anything away from you, but bringing you into the more modern ways of doing applications. So with that, I'm going to go back to my slides, and Maddie will talk to us about this.
Yeah, I'm so excited about some of the things that we're looking at doing for tooling in Maui and in .NET 6. And one of the things that we're really excited about is kind of really leaning on the .NET SDKs and bringing Xamarin into the .NET SDK family. And that gives us a lot of things. In the middle here, you can see our simplified project file. Super exciting. And we're bringing in System Maui and System Devices, which is that evolution of Xamarin Essentials. But on the left, you can also see we only have one project. And I know David mentioned this briefly in his demo, but instead of having those head projects, those Android and iOS projects, you're just going to have one. And what's great about that is you can also target a whole bunch of different things. So in this example, you can see you're targeting David's iPhone or the Google Pixel 3 emulator or a Windows machine. Maybe it's what you're developing on, all from one place without having to switch around the CPUs. So you might be asking, what do I do with all my stuff that goes in the head projects? Well, I am very excited about the ability to share your resources in this single project. So things like your fonts and your icons. So in here, I'm using Font Awesome, and your images, they'll all be shared in a resources folder in this single project across all your different platforms that you're targeting, no matter what it is. Well, what happens with your custom code? Well, that's also shared too in the single project. So right above resources, you might have something like platforms, and these are mock-ups. Obviously, we're looking for feedback on all these things, but we'll have your platforms, and you can see in this one, it's Android and iOS and Windows, and you can go and put in your custom code here. So you still will always have your access to native APIs, which we think is super important, super exciting, and very true to Xamarin. So let's talk about timelines. I know we've mentioned quite a few dates, quite a few things. .NET 5 is the big release coming out this fall. But what you should be looking for when it comes to Maui and Xamarin SDK support and .NET is .NET 6, which is also going to be the first long-term support version of this naming scheme of .NET, which is really exciting.
So we really want to hear from you on all the things that we've just shared, as well as what you see for the future. We have some proposals already up on the .NET Maui repository, some things that we know we want to address that's currently in Xamarin Forms, as well as some future experiences that we want to enable. Of course, for the next foreseeable future, year and a half plus, Xamarin Forms is the place to be, and everything that you get and see there will, again, evolve directly into Maui. So give us your feedback. We have a survey link. We have the proposals up on GitHub. We're really excited to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Maddie, for spending time with me today.
Thank you. This is awesome. I'm sad we couldn't be all together in person, but I really enjoyed doing this. I'm so excited about all the things we have coming out in Xamarin this year.
We should do this again sometime, you know?
We should.
In a few days. All right. See you later, Maddie.